24. So we have plenty of water here, but most of the water that we have, the industrial water, is dirty. It's not dirty, sorry, I'm taking that back. It is not dirty. It's very clean water, but it's turbid, so there's a lot of dirt in it. So that's when Eric was calling the water dirty, and I know somebody was upset by that. And it's like, it's dirt dirty, not, you know, bacteria icky dirty. But anyway, and so it's not usable. And so one of the pulp mills had what they called clarifiers on site that would filter that water before they used it in their facility. There's one clarifier on another mill site. There is one on their site, but it needs to be taken down for the rest of their facility. Just the footprint doesn't allow for them to keep it. And the water district is interested not only in supplying Nordic water, but we need more customers, right, for our water. And especially if we're looking at developing more aquaculture, aquaculture is going to require that water to not have the turbidity or the dirt in it, that surface dirt and all the, you know, the little stuff. And so, so that 16 to 36, I think, or 12 to 36, 34. And it looked like about 24 is what they were thinking. That was the estimate to put a clarifier, which, as I understand it, is just huge monster filter, or a couple of filters that, as the water is taken out of the river around Essex, you guys know between Arcata and Blue Lake, as it's taken out, it would run through this, yes, the surface water, it would run through this facility so that it would be appropriate for aquaculture use out on the peninsula. The Harbor District's also looking at other options. One way or another, these guys need the water, and they don't have the 24, you know, the 12 to 36 million to build this facility for us. And I personally think it's unfair to ask Nordic to take that on if this is part of a larger plan to develop aquaculture and industry out on the peninsula. But we'll see. I mean, we're still exploring that, see if there might be less expensive options, smaller scale options that are more appropriate for Nordic. We're not sure.
So what I've heard was that because of the back in the day when we had a pulp mill, it was, they had to have clean water for the pulp, and they were using the same water. So those clarifiers that are extant on the property now that are going to be just discarded?
Well, one is just in the way, so they cannot maintain it because Nordic's footprint, because their facility requires different facilities. The clarifier on site there is old. I mean, they haven't been maintained, and so that one needs to be removed. There is one on another property farther down on the peninsula. I am not familiar with the condition of that, or whether or not, you know, maybe the water can be actually sent past Nordic, clarified, cleaned there, and then brought back. That I don't know. So there's a question back here.
So if they're going to pay $400 million to build this place, essentially they're going to be paying the county $4 million a year in property taxes.
I don't know how those numbers work out. I'm afraid I'm just not the person to ask. If you don't mind emailing me, I'd be happy to get that information. But I don't know that that's been determined either, because there have been some discussions on maybe doing something to develop the property out there, and maybe I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know enough to know. Yes, sir.
How dependent are they on ice?
They are going to need an ice plant. And so the hope maybe is they may be able to then supply ice to other fishermen or other folks in aquaculture that may need that. They are absolutely dependent on ice because that's how they're going to get this fresh fish out of here.
So they're looking at purchasing ice versus making.
I think they're looking at building an ice plant, but I would need to clarify that. But I think they are looking at actually constructing a facility because they're going to need so much ice. Yes.
So,
Dennis.
There's a lot of volume of water coming, being used, reused, and it's cleaned all the time. Cleaning. I'm curious about the discharge. At MCSD, we have incredibly high quality discharge fluid.
Yeah.
High quality. Probably in some respects better than the water that we are selling to our customers.
We're not going to think too hard about that one.
But we're required by law to chlorinate that before we discharge it. Will that be part of this process? Will it have to be chlorinated before it's discharged?
My guess is no, because there won't be human bacteria. And I know nothing about this, so I'm just talking off the top of my head. My guess is the chlorination is probably because this is human waste and there could be pathogens or things that might prove dangerous to other people. This is filtered, it's filtered coming in, the water's filtered coming in, and then filtered out to 0.5 microns, so it actually filters out bacteria.
we're even better. I'm just.
So as
saying
far as
that's-
I know,
That's something that I don't expect you to know the answer. to,
Right.
But it's something that,
certainly, we are actually talking to the Water Quality Control Board next week, and they will be dictating, ultimately, some of these agencies are frankly just dictating what Nordic has to do and what sort of thresholds they have for their effluent or other things. So they will be letting us know. Question
Maybe you
here?
said this already, but how many gallons of water a day is Nordic going to be using?
So my understanding is it's up to 2 million of salt water. So they need both salt and fresh water for the fish. And there's what the Harbor District calls a sea chest. So there's basically a well in the bay that's salt water, and it's going to be up to 2 million gallons a day there, and 2 to 2.5 million gallons a day of fresh water. And then they mix it to optimal mix for the fish.
Has Nordic talked to the Water District about it? Well, let me just mention, my understanding is that the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District can produce, or used to produce 75 million gallons of water a day. And 60 million of that was pretty much devoted to the pulp mills. Actually, it was like 56 million. Each of the pulp mills had a 2 million gallon a day call on water if they needed it.
Yeah, okay.
But there was 15 million gallons a day of water available for domestic use within the district. I don't know how much water per day or how much of that 15 million gallons a day is being utilized now.
Not
Is that-
much. So, and that's part
Not
of the
much.
issue. Well, the domestic water, I'm not sure, but it's chlorinated, so Nordic can't use it. So the situation as I understand it with the water district is they have 4 of what's called rainy wells. And so these are deeper into the riverbed, and so there's natural filtration. And 3 of those, at least 3 of those are used for domestic water. So it's cleaner coming in, and then they chlorinate it, and then they distribute it. So Nordic can't tap into that. There is 1 rainy well that is not chlorinated, but is cleaner, but it's not enough to supply them. So the only way for them to get the amount of water that they need that is not turbid but is non-chlorinated is the surface water. Yeah, which is really unfortunate. It seemed like, I'll have this gentleman here and then back here.
Yeah, I had a question on labor. We've got quite a few projects in the past for economic development. Building trades went to bat for some of these companies, and then they, carefully turned their back on the local community and brought in construction workers from Europe to build their local brewery across the bay. I was wondering, will they be bringing their own workforce in, or will they put it out for local bid? And can they commit to hiring local apprenticeship programs to local apprentices?
So-
It's really important for our training, for our future.
Absolutely. So they've been talking, I've worked with Jeff Hunterlack for a couple of years now on a couple of different projects, and it was so funny, when I started working for Nordic, I was warned by somebody, Jeff wants to talk to you about that project. And I was happy about that, because Jeff works really hard, and there are others that work really hard to make sure that local folks get the jobs when the jobs are available here. And Nordic has been talking to him and talking to others since the beginning. It's going to be prevailing wage. They are clear that they need the best. And that local, and that they need local, and in part, local makes sense, frankly, because they don't want to bring laborers in because that's more expensive. But they also want people who know what they're doing. And so yes, they are very, very interested in hiring local, not only during the construction phase, but then once the facility is built and on site. They do recognize that there may be specialized expertise that we're just not able to find here. So in that situation, they will have to go where they can find the talent, but they don't want to do that unless they're forced to. And they've really been clear on that since the beginning.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking. This gentleman here first in the hat.
So, getting back to the clarifier.
Yeah.
I mean, it would almost seem like, the the water district isn't really capable of ponying up and building a clarifier.
Right.
So if Nordic is coming in with all this money, why wouldn't they build a clarifier and maybe sell that clarified water to the district?
Build a clarifier on water district property.
Build it on the lease facility out here at their site.
Oh, I don't know that they've looked into that. Actually, that's something to look into. No, and it is, the reality is that, yeah, the water district at this point doesn't have the funding. The problem is I mean, it's easy when we think of a company coming in, as a company having deep pockets, being able to spend however much money they want. But the thing to remember is they have investors that if they're anything like me, you know, even if you're looking at a bigger project that's expensive, you still don't want to spend any more than you have
No,
to.
but the point is they would have another product.
If they could recover that, and actually that's not an option that's been talked about. The other thing is the Harbor District is also looked at maybe citing something, because there are a number of companies that are hoping to attract to the peninsula, and Nordic just being kind of a catalyst for that development. And so it would be more likely, and they don't own the Harbor District property, they're leasing it. So if they actually put like a $25 or $30 million facility on public property, they're kind of building public infrastructure.
There's solar farm anyway.
I'm sorry?
They're looking to buy some other property. for their
Correct.
solar farm.
That, yes, yeah. Yeah, it's something I'll definitely bring up, because we are still just looking at options and trying to find the thing that's going to work best for them, and frankly convince their investors, because right now we don't have a concrete plan on how we're going to solve this problem, and that's going to be concerning for investors, you know, because they may look like deep pockets, but money's money. But I'm going to hold on. Sorry, but I'm just going to note this, because that is an option that hadn't come up. We've got a couple here, Bob, and then Joe in the back.
My understanding there's a 4-foot industrial pipe coming in for the old mill.
That sounds right. I don't know the specs exact. 4 or 5 feet big.
Is that not treated?
That is not treated.
And is that not possible to use that 4-foot water?
No, that's the infrastructure that would bring the water out to the peninsula and used to. So that exists.
And that water's coming from the surface or from that one?
If in order to give Nordic, yes, it would be coming from the surface. In order to meet Nordic's needs for fresh water,
Which is not
yes.
where it's coming from for the pulp mill.
That's where it did come from. Yes, yeah. For the 2 pulp mills, actually, there were 2 pulp mills. So Joe in the back.
Somebody mentioned something about the DNA of these fish could get out through the alcohol pipe. Is there any truth to that? I don't know anything about the science of it, but and then they mix in with all of our other fish. Why can't they just make the same kind of fish we have here and you wouldn't have to worry about it?
That's actually the bigger concern, because when a fish is being farmed or when it's controlled, they breed them, right? Like the Atlantic salmon is suited for fish farming. And Pacific, the fisheries out here is different, and so the bigger concern really would be crossbreeding similar species, not different. The filtering system, that there are multiple physical barriers, including a 0.5 micron filter that the water is going to go through before it goes out that outflow pipe. So it is filtering bacteria. I mean, it's no fish is going to get through. It's physically impossible for a fish to get through all of the physical barriers that have been set up. So that is not a danger. I think Pete first.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was told that there are 2 pipelines that run from the district out through Samoa. One is the industrial water, which is unfiltered, as she's talked to. And the other is the smaller pipe that has the domestic water supply that continues out to the water district, the municipal water district. You have to think of the official name of it. So, and that runs under the bay and then up on the other side and goes to that. So, and then the town of Samoa gets it from that treated system, which is subsurface as opposed to the surface. The other aspect of it is a conversation with somebody from the water district said that they do have some land across the river near the rainy wells that may be an initial site to do some of the filtering, which the economics of the processes is better to transport that water rather than all that water and then deal with all the ramifications. So there's a lot of things that due diligence on a lot of people's part have to be done on this.
Yes.
And for them to take charge of the whole industrial water source when they're using a small part is a bit of a burden, but they can be the catalyst for that infrastructure upgrades if necessary.
Absolutely. Well, if I can add on to that real quick, I think one of the other reasons that the Water District is looking at siting a clarifier up at Essex rather than on the peninsula is it then allows them to distribute that water, that less turbid water, to any customer. You know, so if they were just looking at developing on the peninsula, then great. You could have it out on the peninsula and that would be great. But if the Water District has it further up, then they can send that water north, they can send that water south. It just it opens up the opportunity for more industrial development. So I think that's one of the things that they're considering. And again, you're right. Nordic's really a catalyst for these conversations. I mean, they'd happen to a certain extent, but it really, my sense of it, and I could be wrong here, but my sense of it is they weren't really on the ground, what do we need, how much do we need to get this all done sort of conversations. And so Nordic coming in has really prompted that. And I think Dennis was next, and then I'll go to you, Mary.
So just three things. One's kind of silly, but 5 microns doesn't mean anything. Did any of you watch Jurassic Park? Just say it. Okay. There is some truth in that.
But it's smaller than a piece of hair.
Nature finds a way to do its thing. Anyway, as far as the clarifier, it is absolutely better on as close to the source as possible.
Okay,
period.
that makes sense.
Second of all, MCSD is a union member of Humboldt Municipal Water District. And I can tell you that as one of 7 union members, we ain't gonna pay. Our customers are not going to pay.
Right.
They're not going to be supporting of paying anymore. So, this operation is going to have to pony up some, and you're going to have to get politically active to get grant money, other types of investment type money to get this done.
Yes.
If you're counting on Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District to sell this to the unis,
Not going to happen. I hear you, Dennis, loud and clear.
Clarification. My last thing I want to say is to the jobs. We, all of us, we put pressure on the people out there that are going to sign this contract, that not only is it prevailing wage, but it's going to be local, union, and apprentice. And we can force that into the contract. They write contracts any way they want, so let's not let them off the hook.
You're not going to find an argument there, I can tell you that already. But yeah, so push them all you need to. That is what they want to do. Mary.
2 things. When I was on council, I was one of the delegates to the Humboldt Municipal Water District Task Force. And I remember at one of the meetings, and I'm not sure who else, if Dennis was part of that or not, but they said that they had spent $10 million researching and trying to find a way to sell their excess water before the deadline happens when the state takes it away. And they were doing the research to try to ship the water to Mendocino County and elsewhere. And they had done, I think they said 10 million in research. And if I'm not mistaken, at that time I went, whoa, that's a big amount of money. And then that's when I introduced the concept that maybe that if we do get the east-west rail going, that it would be a benefit for everybody that's going to develop out here on the peninsula for shipping, to have alternate shipping for both the fish, for bringing in turbines, for import and export, not relating to, you know, Green Diamond or those kind of things that have to be done just by ship. Anyway, that's a lot of money that they spent just on studies. And if that's true, I know, and if that's true, then that's...
Hold on, that's absolutely not correct.
How much did they say they spent?
We spent some money, we've been working on this for a long time, we've been on that task force. I can't, that's ridiculous.
I thought it was, I'm sorry.
No, that's whoever say that.
Well, we could verify that. Anyway, the other thing that happened...
Money, but no.
Okay. The other thing that happened was Larry Otker said in, I think it was an article in the paper, that the taxes from this project will more than pay for any investment in clean up a water supply. And I don't know if this is a wholesale business where there's no retail sales tax collected, then it would only be property tax or the money from workers who are buying stuff in the community, the 80 new people. I mean, so that doesn't make sense.
I can't speak to what Larry was talking about there, I wasn't there, and he
It
would
was
have
in the
to answer
paper,
that question.
so you
Yeah.
guys should vet
Yeah.
if people are saying things that are absolutely fictitious, because he said that taxes alone will pay for this.
2%
And I don't remember
of
seeing that or
400 million, or,
4%.
of,
I mean, one, excuse me,
Yeah.
go ahead, Pete.
We don't get much, you know, for the property tax.
And then we get 15% of that.
One of the issues there that I understand, and I would love that, if the property tax coming off the peninsula just went to pay for infrastructure, I think that would be great. But then that is diverting that revenue from other potential projects in the county. You know, that would be
He
a
just said-
question the Board of Supervisors, I think, would
He
have
just
to
said
explore.
taxes.
And I can't
Is it a
tell you what
retail
he
or a
meant.
wholesale business?
It's wholesale, it is not
Okay.
retail. I doubt they're going to do any direct to consumer. Yes, sir.
What's the, there was talk about cleanup of the contaminated soil. What is, what's that gonna cost?
Don't know, sampling is still being done, some additional sampling, so the EPA had a plan, and Nordic actually asked that they expand that, and then they're doing some independent sampling using their own consultants as well. Part of it is just the health of the property. They want to make sure if they are, that if they're going to site there, that there's no possibility of frankly, their fish being damaged or hurt in any way by any environmental issues that they may have out there. But part of it too, I think, is just being responsible in that if they're going to start building, you know, what potential impacts could that have? Could they be disturbing something and in that way or needing to clean something up or that sort of thing? So they're not sure. And the cost, and that's part of the due diligence, really, they need to know if they're getting into the site, if they're taking that on, what is it going to cost? Because that will be a part of the project. And ultimately, really, they've got investors, right? So ultimately, these numbers have to make sense. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're putting $100 in or $100 million in, you still want a return on your investment. And so really that's what their investors are going to have to look at, and that's what the argument in September hopefully is compelling enough to convince those investors that whatever cost there is associated with the developing here is worth it.
The county, at the Board of Supervisors meeting last week, the county board seemed to direct the staff to try to figure out, or put a task force together and figure out what state and federal funds might be available.
Again, it's the infrastructure. Just because that infrastructure, I mean, that that $12 to $36 million is a huge price tag, right? And could be enough for Nordic to say, you know what, we needed clean water. We were told there was clean water. We can't get it without another, $24 million. That doesn't work for us. The county's recognizing that this project is, and I'm not saying it's in jeopardy, but potentially if we don't solve this problem. And so county staff, not only to help Nordic, but I think bigger development on the peninsula, county staff was directed to see if there might be funding sources, if there may be other ways, loan mechanisms, who knows what there may be to help us develop this infrastructure, not only for Nordic, which of course is primary right now, but just long-term development on the peninsula. Because we're not going to get a lot out there if we don't figure this out.
Any prediction, I know it's only been a week since the board directed, but any prediction on how soon that information or the likelihood of getting federal or state grants?
Scott Adair was given 45 days to come back with a report to the soups within 45 days. And I know he's working on it already.
So let's have one more question. We'd like to get out of here by.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize what time it was.
Yeah.
Yes. Marion's got to pick if it's the last question.
Well, is it important, really important?
Well, I saw on the board that there was about the earthquake and tsunami, and what about sea level rise also?
Sea level rise, earthquake, and tsunami, those are all important considerations. Those are things that are also being researched right now as part of due diligence. There's been some conflicting information as far as the sort of adjustments they'll have to make to the facility to adjust for tsunami, especially sea level rise. They are out of the projected water level. The Harbor District, and there's some other agencies, I think, that have kind of figured out where the bay is going to be in the next 30, 50, 100 years. I don't think their facility is in jeopardy there. But tsunamis, of course, are something that they need to worry about. Earthquakes, I mean, if they're putting $400 million here, they want that building to stand, even through an earthquake or a tsunami. So they're working on that as well.
We could take one more from the
Yes.
Related to that.
Yeah.
In March 2011, we had a tsunami here from Japan. And it wiped out Crescent City Harbor and Santa Cruz. But we, the bay provides some protection, the
Yes.
peninsula. We lucked out because it was at low tide. Geologists told us that if it was at high tide, the wave would have gone to the plaza in Arcata. Now, we're right here on the Cascadian subduction zone, and we're being told we're overdue for a major fault shift. So how would your buildings hold up? Is there an aquifer underneath that would create liquefaction because it's all sand, and so on?
So,
Those are
again,
questions.
they're still looking into that. Basically, they're going to have to adhere to building code, and what I've been told is the 2020 building standards will incorporate tsunami mitigation. And so that's beyond me as far as the engineering or what specifically would need to happen for that. But I know that nothing's going to be built out there unless it's to code and has addressed all of those potential risks. And that's what I know right now. Is they move further into the process, certainly they'll have to get more specific on what those building specs are going to look like to reassure not only building officials but also their investors that that building's going to stand.
I think if you have more questions, you could just ask her directly. Is that okay?
You should do all the presentations, because your guys don't do a very good job. You do a good job.
I very much appreciate your time. I've got some business cards. I'll just leave here on the end. You are welcome to reach out anytime, email or phone. Marion does have an old view. Larry does too, so you can always track me down another way. That's probably easiest.
Sid, come and ask her. What are your questions?